So the good news is we have science now. Like over the last few decades, we've gained powerful research-based tools that show us how relationships work and why they break down. And more importantly, how to rebuild them from the inside out. So let me walk you through at least three of the most powerful and proven models we now have.
Welcome to Reforged, a podcast by the Authentic Masculinity Project, a place where we have raw conversation about modern masculinity, capacity, complexity, integration, and authenticity.
Hey guys, and welcome to Reforged, a podcast by the Authentic Masculinity Project. My name is Scott Austin Martin, and I am a licensed professional counselor. I am a somatic processing trauma therapist, and most importantly, I am a very proactive relationship transformation coach. Welcome to the podcast. Today, we're talking about something uncomfortable but important. What if I told you that many couples, after investing time and energy and money into counseling, actually end up divorced anyway? And that's not a dramatic opener. It's statistically grounded. In fact, research shows that not all couple therapy works. And sometimes it actually accelerates the breakdown of the relationship. Now, I'm not here to bash therapy. I love therapy. I've done therapy. I give therapy. Like, I'm a big fan of therapy. I'm here to shine a light on why some forms of it work and why some don't. Because the truth is, not all counseling or coaching is actually created equal. So the problem with just talking, and you've probably heard the story before, or maybe you've lived it. A couple is struggling. They argue often. The intimacy is gone or non-existent. Maybe there's been a betrayal or just years of slow disconnection. So they go to therapy, hoping to fix it. But what actually happens in the room? They talk and talk and talk. They rehash the same conflicts. They vent. They might get a few communication tools like use I statements or active listening, but nothing really shifts. No one understands why they're reacting the way they are. Old pain gets triggered again, resentment builds, and in some cases, therapy just gives them better vocabulary to fight with. Literally taking these concepts and they begin weaponizing. Oh, you're doing that thing the therapist said that you couldn't do. So like, what's going on here actually? Like, why doesn't talking, reflective listening always help? And the answer is, or the short answer is, talking to the mind doesn't heal the heart. And if your therapist or coach doesn't understand that, then you're just putting a Band-Aid over a bullet wound. So the good news is we have science now. Like, there is really good news. Like, over the last few decades, we've gained powerful research-based tools that show us how relationships work and why they break down. And more importantly, how to rebuild them from the inside out. So let me walk you through at least three of the most powerful and proven models we now have. Okay. So number one on my list, big fan, the Gottman Method, developed by doctors John and Julie Gottman. And this approach is built on literally decades of research, observing real couples and real interactions. They actually put couples in a fake apartment and filmed them in what they call the love lab, and then followed them so there's like 3 studies over 3 decades, I believe. So what did they find? They could, looking at the data, and now making the predictions, they could predict divorce with literally over a 90% accuracy based on the presence of certain behaviors. Things like criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling are deadly to a relationship. They call these the 4 horsemen, as in the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, or the apocalypse or ending of a relationship. But more than that, they identified what healthy couples do differently. They turn towards each other emotionally. They build trust and emotional safety. They learn how to repair after conflict. Like, you can even engage in the 4 horsemen, but if you've got a really healthy way of repairing, that can make all the difference in the world. So the Gottman Method doesn't just help couples talk, it teaches them how to connect emotionally in real time using structure, not just feelings. So they have a book, it's called The 7 Principles of Making a Marriage Work. I recommend putting that, and these tools are amazing. What we're also going to talk about before we leave these particular modalities is the understanding of why sometimes even that doesn't work. And we'll talk about contempt a little bit as well. But moving on to emotion focused couples therapy, EFT or EFCT, not to be confused with emotion freedom technique or tapping. EFT, if the Gottman method focuses on behavior, EFT, developed by Dr. Sue Johnson, it dives into attachment and core emotional needs. So, attachment theory has been around since the 1950s, and it's probably one of the most effective predictors of behavior. And it's one of those things that's really, I think, necessary for a lot of people to find out, because in the concept of secure and insecure attachment, secure is what we want. Insecure has different varieties. And a general rule of thumb is that we're either over engaging, moving forward, grasping something with anxiety, or we're withdrawing, disconnecting. And both of those movements are a protective mechanism that quite frequently are based off of conditioning that we received at the hands of our caretakers whenever we were children. And then the other one is a disorganized or a fearful avoidant, which can be anywhere on that. So move away, move towards, can be anywhere on the spectrum of that, or both as well. So when a partner shuts down or lashes out, it's not just about the dishes or the schedule. It's about feeling unseen, unheard, or unsafe. In fact, these three words, safe, heard, understood, I recommend to most of my clients that they go get that embroidered on a pillow that you keep on your couch. Go put it on some artwork that's hanging up where you talk about stuff, because this safe, heard, understood is just such an effective way to begin a conversation and to end a conversation. Because if you don't feel safe, heard, or understood, then you really haven't probably ended that conversation. Now, EFT, understanding how these patterns are created and how they show up as often very deep subconscious neurological defense mechanisms that were designed to keep us safe or to connect us in what was being offered at the time. EFT helps couples identify those raw emotional undercurrents. It helps us to de-escalate conflict by getting underneath the blame and understanding, and to rebuild secure emotional bonds, because the cure for insecure attachment is secure attachment. Now, the one thing I like to point out that maybe a lot of people that talk about attachment theory don't, is that attachment theory, like understanding masculine and feminine energy, is a system of symptoms. And understanding those symptoms is phenomenal, because understanding will open the door to empathy, and empathy will open the door to connection, both with yourself and with your partner. And connection can lead us to integration, and integration can lead us back to wholeness, or to wholeness maybe we've never had, if we're healing literally generational childhood trauma patterns, conditioning, modeling, or past romantic relationship wounding as well. So often there are subconscious things that are in the way that, again, that came on board to protect us, but they're now actually blocking us from connecting and growing the way that we truly, our soul would want to. And we need to be able to identify it. We need to be able to open the hood, look at the engine on this, and be able to figure out how to melt those things that really truly actually don't serve us anymore. We don't need their protection anymore, and we want to connect. Okay, so moving on. Number 3 that I really want to talk about is human needs psychology. And some of you might have seen this popularized. You might know a particular transformation coach by the name of Tony Robbins, but he kind of made that famous. But it's the work of a brilliant woman by the name of Chloe Madonnas. This model asks a radical but essential question: what need is this behavior trying to meet? And the framing, scaffolding of this is that we all have 6 human core needs. And the reality is that every single one of us are going to fill every single one of those needs. The question is, are we going to fill those needs negatively, neutrally, or positively? Because we can fill needs in a lot of ways. Like one of them being significance, and I'll go through these, but one of them being significance, you can get your significance from being homeless. You can get your significance from being the person with the greatest problems. You can also get your significance from being the wealthiest, or possibly the person that's done the work to where you actually know how to connect. And that's where we want to head. So these 6 different human needs: certainty. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of say these words that are normally associated, or these feelings that come with each one of these 6. So certainty, safety, control, predictability. How sure are you that you will be safe, right? So that's certainty. Variety seems like it's almost the opposite of that, but it does have to do with change, surprise, stimulation, like we need a variety in our life as well. So we both want to be really, really sure, and we want a lot of different flavor. So significance, like we mentioned before, this is feeling important, needed, worthy. But when we say, for example, move into the significance of the need to be right, we then, sacrifice the next pillar, which is what? Love and connection. And love and connection are not the same thing. Often people will actually sacrifice love for connection. Love is what we actually want. So, but love and connection, this has to do with bonding, intimacy, and closeness. And just by balancing these things like significance and connection, often we can see a pattern of how people interact, whether they get angry or they get sad, and what the purpose of that is, as well. And sometimes just the click of saying, I'm going to value connection over the significance of needing to be right can be a dramatic shift in behavior by creating that understanding in the way that you actually want your life to move, and by creating a contrast and say, I choose this. The fifth one is growth, which has to do with personal development. And the sixth one is contribution, giving beyond ourselves. So these first four, certainty, variety, significance, love, and connection, are really kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They're like the first scenario. And the last two are really much more about fulfillment. But the irony is that if you can fill those two, often those first four are actually filled, which I find quite ironic and inspiring, actually. So in a relationship, if two people are meeting their needs in unhealthy or competing ways, it creates chaos. I mean, for example, one partner might crave certainty through control, while the other seeks variety through independence. And if both don't understand what's underneath their behaviors, they'll just keep missing each other. Or worse, they'll start resenting each other. And then that can build. And now we've got to figure out a way to empty that out somatically and in process. So human needs psychology gives us a language, a vocabulary, and honestly, a really useful system of mindful inquiry to kind of look at the pillars of our life in such a way that we can figure out what works, what doesn't work, and what can actually be next for us. So it gives us a language to understand what we're really chasing, even when we don't realize it. And that's kind of the purpose is we want a system of inquiry that helps us understand us. All right. So the deeper work, we kind of hinted at this, the subconscious wounds. And this is the real kicker. Even the best relationship techniques, they won't land. So that's why when we talk about the four pillars of AMP work, strategy is the last pillar. Path is the first pillar, because if our inner wounds are running the show, let's be real. If you have abandonment trauma, well, let's see, one of the common defense mechanisms for abandonment is dependency, right? How is that showing up? If you learned as a child that love is conditional, one of the other wounds, betrayal. What's the dependency, or one of the dependency mechanisms for that? One of the defensive mechanisms for that is control. So if conflict meant danger in your home growing up, if your nervous system is constantly on edge, then communication or no communication tool in the world will matter until those wounds are seen and soothed. So we don't just connect from our adult minds, we connect from our inner child. In fact, it's actually a very, very useful thing for a couple to examine the abstract reality of there's two 7-year-olds that are basically trying to figure out how to deal with each other, because often that's actually true. We have these complementary wounds that are a part of why we're often attracted to our partner. Trauma bonding is what we call that. So we connect from our inner child, from our body, from our history, from our neural system in the way that it was trained. The brain and the neural system are going to do what they normally do. So if you were conditioned with this certain resonance of your neural system, then what are you going to be drawn to? You're going to be drawn to that because being drawn to that as you're growing will cause pain, and pain is a guide that will reflect to you what you actually need to heal. So this is the beauty of a relationship, is that it gives us an amazing mirror. And often if you move into the coping mechanisms, which are some of the most common ones of avoidance or projection, and you leave the relationship, for a lot of people, the next thing that's coming for them, if you don't use the mirror that's in front of you, is a bigger mirror, right? So I never advocate for somebody to stay in a toxic situation. And that's why we teach people about boundaries. That's another topic. But what a mirror is in front of you. And healing in relationship is actually a lot easier than healing out of relationship. But again, you have to be safe for you. And the deepest healing happens when we bring those unconscious drivers to the light, not with shame, but with compassion and curiosity. Okay, so not all help is helpful, is the basis of this. So let's come back to where we started. Why do some couples divorce after therapy? Because if that therapy just manages behavior, or only mediates arguments, or skips the body, the nervous system, the wounds, right? Then we're really not healing, we're just coping. And coping only lasts so long. We need to process, dissolve, be with something so that we regain mastery over that particular, whatever that felt sense is. That's why what kind of help you seek matters. That's why you need to choose wisely, whether it's a therapist, coach, course, or guide. The most powerful change happens within. And so my advice here is if you're going into a therapeutic situation and your alarm bells are going off, run, because there is a common scenario in a health industry where a lot of, I know I was, counselors are drawn to this work because we come from a history of trauma. And if you haven't really done the layers of work to melt the subconscious defense mechanisms that came on board to protect you, but are now disconnecting you from connecting or blocking you from connecting and growing the way that you want to, well, then there's a lot of transference that can happen with the relationship with different therapists that are out there. And there are some therapists that have not done a lot of work. So you learn how to recognize your own needs and wounds when powerful change actually occurs. You build emotional awareness and safety. So if you don't feel safe, change something, communicate something. You develop practical tools rooted in real science and soul. So here's my invitation to you. If you've struggled in relationships or you're in one now that feels stuck or strained, don't give up and don't assume it's all on you or all on your partner. Maybe the way you're trying to fix it isn't actually built for healing. You deserve tools that work. You deserve support that sees the whole you, not just your conflicts. And your relationship with yourself and with others can absolutely evolve. So we'll be exploring these models more deeply in upcoming episodes, from the Gottman tools to emotional healing work of EFT to unpacking our core needs and wounds, because real love isn't just about finding the right person. It's about becoming the person who knows how to love and be loved deeply, safely, and fully. So guys, thank you for being here. Until next time, take care of your heart and don't settle for shallow solutions.
Thank you for listening to Reforged. Remember to like and subscribe to